Whom the Gods Fear, by Ann Wdowski. 13. Once the D-mass generator was reset, the Marco Polo jumped to Xing 7, arriving in a fraction of a second. Using the hyper engines meant they would have to wait another 24 hours to be able to make another hyper jump. Making the jump, though, saved them from a 4-day trip on sublight engines. If the 3 Xingese coastal warships continued to the Polo's last position, it would give them an extra 4 days before the Xingese could reach them. That is, if they were not fooled by Glenn's message that the Marco Polo was leaving their star system. On sublight engines, the Polo's helmsman parked them among the ice and rock boulders of Xing 7's thin ring. Construction and mining robots were dropped on the surface of Xing 7. Beforehand, the Polo used its CL weapon systems on a hot setting to clear away a layer of frozen gases on a small section of the alien planet's surface. This clearing gave the robots a workable foundation to build the surveillance station. On the surface, the construction robots first utilized raw materials found on the planet to manufacture the surveillance station. They used the natural features of 2 nearby craters to construct passive receiving stations to intercept microwaves and radio transmissions from the Xingese. Rocks were melted down and crystallized to form glass. The robots grounded and shaped the glass into lenses to construct 2 large optical telescopes to closely observe the orbit and surface of Xing 4. Within 4 days, the construction robots had completed their assembly of the station. The new station had a view of the Xingese home world that rivaled half a dozen early 21st century low-orbiting spy satellites above the Earth. The Polo then sent down 6 technicians to man the station, 2 computer engineers, 2 electrical engineers, and reactor techs to operate the mini-fusion reactors. Captain Mahan's tech sergeants immediately began to process intelligence information on the Xingese coastal fleet and home world. While all of this was happening on the surface of Xing 7, Glenn had locked himself up in his cabin. He had not eaten for several days, didn't speak with anyone, and could not focus or sleep properly. The destruction of the venture was weighing heavily on him. He doubted his abilities to continue on this mission. He let Commander Granite take the reins in supervising the construction and manning of the surveillance station. Captain Rubel was glad that Glenn had put himself under a self-imposed house arrest. He now could take full command of the Polo without Glenn's interference. He also made it clear to many on the Polo that he blamed Glenn for the destruction of the venture. And he went as far to even support Rebecca Stern's condemnations of Glenn Yeager in her reports to the EGG. Landru was becoming extremely concerned about Glenn. He tried often to talk to him, to snap him out of his clear depression. Nothing he said was effective. He felt there was only one person on board who may be able to bring Glenn Yeager out of his despair. "Dr. Hogan, may I please speak to you in private?" Landru approached, and Hogan, who was in the biology lab on one of the computer workstations. She was studying a Xingese documentary on wildlife that the surveillance station had intercepted. She shut off the computer and followed Landru out to the ship's corridor. Once the door shut behind them, Landru continued, "It is Mr. Yeager. I am afraid the destruction of the venture has emotionally affected him. I think you are the only one who can help him get out of his depression." "Me? Why me?" Ann asked. "Wouldn't Dr. Longo talking to him make more sense?" "As professional as Dr. Longo is, she would not have the same effect as you would." "Mr. Landru, I don't see how I would be a better choice than Dr. Longo. I am sure you are aware that Mr. Yeager is extremely fond of you." "Fond of me?" And blushed at the thought. "I had no idea. Dr. Hogan, I have seen how he looks at you. I know Mr. Yeager extremely well. He is clearly attracted to you. I also know he highly respects you from conversations we have had about you. Will you talk to him, please?" A knock came to Glenn's cabin. "Rebecca, go away." Glenn replied, "Is me, Dr. Hogan." Glenn sat up in his cot. "Yes, Dr. Hogan. May I please come in and speak with you?" "Perhaps another time, Dr. Hogan." "Please, Glenn. Let me in," she insisted. He got out of his cot, straightened up his cabin quickly, and himself as best he could. "Just a moment, please." He opened his hatch to find Ann standing there alone. "Thanks, Glenn." she replied, moving past him and sitting herself on his cot. Please close the door. He did as she asked and stood in front of her. Actually, it's a hatch, not a door. Yes, of course. Sorry, Hatch. She patted the part of the cot next to her. Please sit down. Glenn instead sat in the only chair in his extremely small cabin, a stool bolted to the floor next to a work desk built into the wall. Above it was a built-in flat 16 by 9 ratio, 60-inch computer screen. How can I help you, Dr. Hogan? Ann. My name is Ann. I know. Sorry. And I am really not much in a socializing mood. You have had yourself locked up in this cabin for the past week. Don't you think it is time you take command of this mission again? She asked him. I am sure Captain Ruble and Commander Granite have everything in order without me. Commander Granite is merely taking orders from the Stellar Navy. They are only interested in military intelligence to make a strike on the Xingni's home world. As for Captain Ruble, I think his only desire now is Xingni's blood. Yes, Landru has informed me of our situation. He informed me that you don't think the Xingni's attack on the Venture was intentional, and handed him her touchpad. I think you should read this. It is a transcript from a Xingni's Tri-Council intercept. Glenn took the touchpad from her and read it. According to this, it was a lone, itchy-trigger-fingered white fighter pilot that destroyed the Venture. Yes. So it seems you are correct. Have Ruble and Granite seen this? Yes, they even passed it on to the EGG 2 days ago. And answered him, the EGG replied that it is clearly an attempt of misinformation for their public to justify their action. That doesn't make any sense. You said this was a Tri-Council communique. Was there any announcement of this on their public broadcasts? None. She answered him. So then how could this be an attempt to manipulate their public's opinion if they never released the information to their public? He asked, handing her touchpad back to her. This is why you need to get back into the game, Glenn. Ruble and Granite do not see what you see. They have lost the goal of this mission, to find what happened to Demi and his crew. Thank you for your vote of confidence in me. Is just after the disappearance of Demi and his crew, the loss of my company, all my personal assets gambled into the polo. And now the destruction of the Venture and the deaths of JD and all his passengers. I no longer have much confidence in myself. Everything I have touched has turned into a disaster. And responded by forcefully and unexpectedly slapping Glenn in the face. Ow! What was that for? He rubbed his face where she had slapped him. For someone so petite, you have a hell of a wallop. We do not have time for you to feel sorry for yourself. We have a mission that you put us all on. Most of us are on this ship because we believe in you. We are all depending on you, not Captain Ruble or Commander Granite. I am not a god, and I am only a man. She angrily punched him in the shoulder and scolded him. I didn't say you are a god, but you are the only man that can see this through. You truly expect Ruble, Granite, or Rebecca Stern to find out what really happened to Demi and his people? Do you think they can prevent the First Interstellar War? All because of a trigger-happy white and a foolish, irresponsible son of a billionaire. Glenn was rubbing his shoulder in pain, not saying a word, fearing if he did, he might make her angrier. She took a moment to regain her composure as she fought back the emotions welling up in her eyes. Glenn, you are able to see things and understand things like no other person I have ever known. More importantly, you have a talent to help others see clearly and to get them to listen and follow you. I am sorry. I just feel so tired. And reached out and took his hands into hers. Glenn, you are not alone. I am here for you if you need me. You have many on this ship that don't only admire you, but truly love you. Glenn looked into Ann's eyes. His eyes began to tear slightly. Thank you, Ann. Thanks for giving me a slap of reality. Thank you for being here for me. She held his hands tighter. I can never forget when you were there for me 3 years ago. Most of us on this ship at one time or another have had you there for us when we needed you the most. Even Captain Ruble, although I think he has forgotten that.